Hello everyone, I would like to welcome you to this lab session. You will not see me, I'll just record the voice. And I have online GDB, Java, online compiler instead of the Eclipse. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about one of the lab assignments I would give you normally, but in these circumstances we have to do it online. Okay, so here's the assignment. We need to write a method that displays an n by n matrix using the following header. Public static void print matrix int n. Each element is either 0 or 1, which is generated randomly. Write the test program that prompts the user to enter n and displays an n by n matrix. Okay, so the idea is this. Let's say the n is equal to 3. Okay, so in this case, what do we need to do? We need to display n by n matrix, which is 3 by 3 matrix. Okay, um, each entry. So, well, I guess. Okay, I hope you know what matrix is, right? So a matrix would be like a table, right? Two-dimensional. So yeah, two-dimensional array with like a table with 3 rows and 3 columns. Okay, each one of them, each value is that 3 by 3 matrix. So we have total 9 values. Is either 0 or 1. Okay, so something like this would be right answer. 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0. Okay, so again, 3 columns, 3 rows, a table of 3 columns and 3 rows. So 9 values total. Each one of them is either 0 or 1, randomly generated, completely randomly. Okay, cool. So what do we have to do? We need to do this. We need to create that method first, right? Okay, public static void print matrix. Okay, we need to print that out, right? So we need to print it. Okay, cool. So what do we need to do? We need to, let's call this method. Let's call it method on, let's say 3. Okay. By the way, I'm going to show you an approach which I highly recommend using when solving problems in general. So I remember I was competing in programming. What is it on speed? There were some competitions where we needed to solve problems like on time. So basically, gosh, I'm horrible at explaining that. We were solving computer science problems, and the person who solves them correctly, the quickest, right? That person wins. Okay, so we kind of speed programming. We need to solve it. We need to solve problems not only correctly but also quickly. Okay. So in general, when you do something like this, your code needs to run without any mistakes. Writing the code without any mistakes is more important than writing the code which works correctly. Okay, so how do you avoid mistakes? The way you avoid mistakes is you just avoid situations when you spend huge amount of time writing some kind of code and then you realize that it was not working. In order to avoid that, you kind of need to take a modular approach. Okay, so you kind of need to break the process of writing the code into a modular structure. Okay, so step number one, then compile and run the code. Then step number two, okay, of solving the problem, then compile and run. Step number three, and so on. Okay, so let's say we want to solve this problem. What would be step number one? Step number one would be create a method with the right header and call it. Okay, so that'll be step number one. Okay, step number two would be in this case. Okay, so now at that point we already created the method and we can with the right header and we can call it. Then second step would be doing what? Okay, so let's say print out a fixed matrix of the right size. Okay, so we can call the method. Let's kind of, what's the next step? Like, so baby steps. We would ignore n completely and we would just print out the matrix of the right size, so let's say 2 by 2. Okay, once we can do that, we will change the size to be n by n. Okay, that'll be step number 3. Then step number 4, what would that be? Okay, so if we can print out the matrix of size n by n, we can what else? Okay, so we can probably, yeah, print out n by n matrix of random random values. Okay, either 0 or 1. Okay. Step number 4, 5. Step number 5, what would that be? Ask user to input n. Okay, and I think that would conclude the exercise, right? So that would be it. Okay, I think that's it. So write the method displays n by n matrix, okay, using the following header. Each element is either 0, 1 or generated. Write a test program that prompts the user to enter and displays n by n matrix. Okay, cool. So, okay, first step. What's the first step? Create a method with the right header and call it. Okay, so we create the method with the right header. Okay, let's try to call it. Okay, so obviously we should see nothing in the console. Okay, perfect, that works. Now let's try to print something out. Println. Let's print out our n. And so we should see 3, right? Cool, perfect. Okay, awesome. So step number 1, check, right? Got that. Now step number 2, print out a fixed matrix of the right size. Or the fixed size. Okay, so I'm going to print out the matrix of the size 2 by 2. Okay, 2 by 2. And I'm not going to randomly generate the values. I'm going to set them to be 1. Okay, so how do I create something like this? How to create a structure like that? Like 3 by 3 or 2 by 2? How would I do that? Okay. Okay, so let's imagine that we want to print out only one row, okay, which is comprised of 3 variables. How would I do that? Of three numbers. The way I would solve it, I would use a for loop. Okay, so I would say for I is equal to 0, I is less than, so if it's 3 by 3, less than 3, I plus plus. Okay, and then I would say system.out.println. Okay, and let's say 1. Now let's add the braces to make sure we're working correctly. To make sure it works. Okay, 1, 1, 1, 3 ones. Okay, now what if I do this? To make them printed out in the raw. 1, 1, 1, perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's the way to print out 3 ones in one line, right? So now we just need to do it 3 times. Okay, we just need to do it 3 times. So what I can do this twice, right? Now, if I print that out, that may not work because there'll be like 9 of them, okay? Why? Because between here and here, I do not go to a new line. That's why I can print out a new line. Okay. I can say println. Println by default, if you don't have anything in the parentheses, it prints out a new line. Println. Perfect. Okay, awesome. Now the problem is that the amount of columns is dependent on the variable I on this border, right? So in this case, I goes from 0 to 3, excluding 3. So there are like 3 columns. But the amount of rows really depends on how many times I copy this. Okay, so that's not very convenient. It'll be That's why the best way to change that, the best way to do it is to have so-called nested for loops. So basically a for loop inside of the for loop, okay? So I would create another for loop, int I is equal to j. So int j is equal to 0, j is less than 3, j plus plus, okay? Okay, and that's something I remember when I was learning how to code, that actually took me a long time to figure out, but I noticed that for my students it's actually easier to understand how it works compared to me. Okay, so here's how it works. So imagine that we are a compiler, so we're doing the entire execution, okay? At the very beginning, when the code goes over here, right, so like when the code is there, j is equal to 0, okay? I is not created yet. Then we go over here, I is created, it's equal to 0, okay? So then we print out 1, okay, we print out 1. So the output looks like 1, okay? Then the first iteration of this for loop, which is called innermost loop, is finished. It comes back over here, I is being incremented, right? J is still equal to 0, right, because we didn't get back here yet. But I is now equal to 1. Okay, I is equal to 1. What do? Print out 1 and a space. Okay, we finish here, come back over here, I plus plus, so I is being incremented, right? But we didn't change j yet, so that's why j is equal to 0, I is equal to 2. Okay, is 2 less than 3? Yes, that is true. We get inside, we print out 1 and in the space. Okay, cool. So then after that, what happens? What happens after this? J is being j is still 0, right? I becomes 3, right? I plus plus. Now I, which is 3, is compared to 3. Is 3 less than 3? No. That's why this loop terminates, right? And nothing happens. We don't go inside. Okay. At this point, we finish with this loop, right? Then Java is going to come back over here, increment j, right? Increment j. Okay, so j is equal to 1. Then it's going to come here. It's going to start executing this loop. And now I is being created one more time and being assigned to 0. Okay, so when the Java virtual machine comes over here to this line, j is equal to 1, I is equal to 0, and then let's print that out. Okay, yeah, so we're going to print out 1. Okay, and that's not what we want, right? So we want to print out 3 ones and then go to the new line. Okay, so every time when we're finished with this for loop, and before the next iteration of the outermost for loop, we need to print out a new line. We need to break it. We need to do like this. So how do we do that? We're just printing out an empty. We print out a new line. So we just say println. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So again, when j is equal to 1, I is equal to 0, we print out 1 on the new line. Okay. Then I is being incremented. J is still the same. J is still the same. I is being incremented to 1. Okay. Then is 1 less than 3? Yes, that is true. Print out a new 1 in the space. Okay. Then again, j is equal to 1. I is incremented to 2. Okay. So is 2 less than 3? Yes, that is true. Print out a new 1. Okay. And then, yeah, so then what happens then? Then j is equal to 1, I becomes equal to 3, okay? Is I less than 3? No, it's not true. That's why we terminate this loop, print out a new line, okay? So we go from here, I guess from here to over here, okay? And then j becomes equal to 2, okay? And the whole story repeats, okay? So we print out like 3 once one more time, okay? And after that, so j is equal to 2, I is equal to 0, okay? Then I is equal to 1, I is equal to 2. Then I is equal to 3. In this case, we don't print anything out, right? And then j becomes 3. Okay, when j is equal to 3, is 3 less than 3? No, it's not true. That's why this loop is being terminated as well. And that's the end of the program, right? So it jumps over here. There is nothing else yet, so it comes back over here to the main, and it says that the main is finished as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's how I get that. So that's the idea. If I run this, I really hope that I will see 3 ones, like 3 by 3 matrix with ones. Am I correct? Perfect. Okay, 3 ones. Awesome. Okay, awesome, nice. So how many rows do we have here? That many rows, right? So each iteration of j creates a new row. And how many columns we have? This many columns. So each I, so the border of the I determines how many columns we have. Okay. And now what do we print out? We print out only once, because here we have 1. Okay. So that is step number 2. Print out a fixed matrix of the size 2 by 2, or like we did 3 by 3. Okay. Perfect. Change the size to be n by n. Okay, so how do we do that? We need to substitute this 3, okay, to a variable we're passing to the print matrix, to this n. Okay, so I'm going to change this to n. Okay. So let's say we want to change this to 10. Okay, is that going to print out a matrix 10 by 10? Looks like it would. Okay, so that looks like there are 10 columns and 10 rows. Perfect. Okay, I'll keep it to 3. Awesome, so that's step number 3. Now, print out n by n matrix of random values, either 0 or 1. Okay, so how do we change that? We need to change these ones to random values. Where do we have the code which is responsible to these ones? Over here, right? So instead of having a fixed one, we need to print out a random variable. Okay, so let's say you completely forgot how to do that. Sorry. Let's go to Google and let's type random variables in Java. Okay. Cool. Random generation in Java. First link helps us a lot. Okay. Random numbers using the math class. Okay, we don't really care what to use, so math class will work. Okay, math.random. Okay, that sounds like a good thing to have. Math.random. Now, the question is, what does it do? It returns as double between 0 and 1, and if you're paying attention to all the classes and all the explanation I'm giving in class, it's going to return a number between 0.0 and 1.0, excluding 1.0. Okay, excluding 1.0. Okay, so that's why you need to be careful. It doesn't include 1. Okay, so if, for example, if I try to do something like this, that will not work, because that returns as a double, not an integer. So not zeros and ones, it's going to be a bunch of doubles. Okay, so you probably want to typecast it, right? Okay, do you think it's going to work? The right answer is no, because there will be no ones. There will only be zeros. Why only zeros? Because again, it doesn't include 1. So basically, this method, math.random, generates numbers between 0 and 0. So basically the range, right? What's the span? 0 and 0.99999999999. Okay? 9 periods, so like a bunch of 9s. And then when you typecast it to an integer, what happens? That number gets truncated. So basically, all the decimal part is being truncated, which means it's being removed completely. So in other words, this random number generator creates a number between 0 and 0. So always zeros, no ones. Okay. So that's why you need to figure something out. One of the solutions is this. You can multiply by 2. Okay. And then typecast it to integer. Okay. What does that mean? So by default, it creates a number between 0 and 0.999. Okay. Now, if you multiply it by 2, right, what would be the span? What would be the range? it'll be again 0 times 0 is 0, and 0.99 by 2 gives us 9 point, what would that be? Same thing, right? 1998. It'll be this, okay? It's never going to be included. Yeah, it will never include 2 to itself, okay? And then when you truncate it, when you truncate the decimal part, when you cast it to an integer, it's going to remove this, okay? So that's why it's going to be a value between 0, so it's either be 0 or 1, okay? So if I run it now, okay, so that sounds like either zeros and ones. Now if I run it again, is that going to change? Just to make sure that at random. Okay, 0, 1, 1. 0, 0, 1. Okay. Now if I run it third time, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so those are random values. Perfect. Okay, awesome. That's step number 4. Now step number 5 is to do exactly the same thing, just change 3 to something which user is going to define. Okay, so in this case, what do we need to do? We need to have a scanner. Import java.util.scanner. Okay. Or what you can actually, well, yeah, and then you can do something like this. I'm going to show you a very cool thing. Scanner input is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay, so input, and then I would say int n is equal to input dot next int. Okay, and then, well, I would also say probably print something out to let the user know that I'm expecting something. Okay, so I would say ln, I would say hello, please type in the matrix size. Okay, yeah, then then he's going to type some number that's going to be scanned as n, and then I'm going to use n here. Let's see if it works. Hello, please type in the matrix size. I would say 4. Enter. Okay, perfect. And that prints out matrix 4x4, table 4x4. Okay, that's cool. Yes, and I think that's it. That's it for this exercise. One more thing I want to show you is a very cool trick. Check this out. Sometimes you may actually avoid this if you are going to use, like, for example, only one scanner, and you'll be using that like for a very short period of time. So what you can do is this, just to, well, okay, so completely up to you, but you can create something like this. You can basically say, okay, and then I think you can comment that out. I think this may work as well. Right, yeah, perfect. Yeah, it works. Okay, awesome. So the idea is this. When you import in a new library, you import in a scanner, right? And later you can use this class. However, if for some reason, let's say you don't want to import a new library, you can actually use it this way. You can just substitute the class name with the class name and where you imported that class from. Okay, so scanner comes from the java.util library. Okay, so you can actually use it right there. Then, of course, if you are creating another scanner, you will not be able to create a scanner like this anymore, right? Because you did not import java.util library. So if you create another scanner, you would have to do it again. Okay. Whew. Hope it helped. What I want you guys to do for the lab, I want you to solve the same problem. I want you to format the code well. I want you then later, especially again if you can change something in it, I would definitely appreciate that. and I want you to submit it to the Blackboard. I'll see you guys later. Bye, bye, bye.